From the crack of dawn to dusk, our boy is on a mission. At 7 a.m., he's out running 10 kilometers in the rain, like he's auditioning for a sports drink commercial. By noon, he's going all out, throwing 500 head strikes like he's got beef with a punching bag. Then, at 5 p.m., he's hitting the gym, knocking out 10 sets of bench presses, squats, and deadlifts. His muscles are probably staging a protest, but our MC doesn't care. 14 days of this madness, and he finally snaps. He storms into his boss's office, slaps down his resignation letter, and leaves without a word. Someone once asked him if he had lost his mind. He thinks now maybe it would be better if he had. After all, sanity seems more like a nuisance these days. His eyes fall on a status window that ominously flashes. The door to the end of days is opening soon. The universe is not subtle with its hints. The message recommends some last-minute prepping, strength training, cardio, and kendo. 'Cause why not? If the world's ending, you might as well be ripped. The countdown ticks ominously from 5 seconds to 0, making his heart race like he's at the starting line of a marathon. Flashback to 15 days ago, and it was a wild day in Jonggyogu. Phones everywhere start blaring with a disaster alert, talking about monsters near Inwang Mountain and suggesting, ever so politely, that people evacuate immediately. Panic hit the streets like a bad plot twist. A student, thinking it might be a prank or some weird social experiment, gets another alert, this time about monsters near Sorak Mountain. Because why not spread the joy? More notifications follow. It's like the monsters got an invite to a global party, but just when it seems it can't get worse, another notification pops up. Monsters have appeared, not a joke? Thanks for the clarification, because people were really starting to doubt this wasn't an April Fool's prank gone too far. A streamer named Sarkarella is live on the scene, hiding behind a tree like he's in the world's worst nature documentary. He's filming a giant figure while his voice trembles like a tuning fork. Comments roll in, half of them roasting him. Someone suggests he play red light, green light with the monster. And then there's a classic comment, "This is why men die faster." But suddenly, one comment stands out, pointing out that the monster is moving. The chat lights up with warnings, but the streamer dismisses them until a growl echoes from right behind him. Cue the collective scream from everyone watching. Our MC nearly drops his phone when it screams too, startling him more than his morning alarm. He squints at the screen, wondering why this video looks way too real to be CGI. Walking through a crowded square, he sees that everyone else seems glued to their phones, reading the same disaster alerts. He mutters to himself, "What's happening today?" He's got enough on his plate without adding monsters into the mix. Making a living is hard enough as it is. As he walks, something catches his eye. A goblin, shackled and panting like it's just escaped from a dungeon. He freezes, feeling a chill crawl down his spine. Should he run? He mutters something about it being the day the math teacher comes, hoping the goblin understands human awkwardness. But instead of attacking, the goblin gives him this look. You know, the one, the help me eyes. It's like a stray puppy, only, way uglier and with a shackle on its leg. Our boy feels torn. A monster with puppy eyes? That's emotional blackmail right there. He mentally fights with himself, reminding himself he's human, and it's a monster. But then, the goblin pulls out a tiny photo of its family and wipes its tears with a handkerchief. Seriously, what's next? A sob story about how it just wants to see its goblin kids graduate? Hoyoung's brain short-circuited for a second. This had to be a joke, right? Still, he decided to help. And just like that, he's holding a small pouch with a shiny golden ball inside. A system window pops up, reading Silver Goblin Pill. The description says, "Once consumed, one will obtain," and leaves it at that. Cliffhanger much? He stares at the pouch, wondering what on earth just happened. Who even eats something as suspicious as this? He reaches out to the system message, half expecting it to be solid, but his finger passes through like it's a hologram. Before he can ponder more, a news anchor's voice blares from a nearby TV, talking about large towers appearing all over the world. And the army that went inside lost contact with the outside world. Great, just what he needed, more apocalyptic news. He stands there, staring at the TV, a million thoughts racing through his head. Just then, a loud explosion shakes the ground, rattling the windows. It's not every day you get to see a Tower of Doom live on TV. Chaos explodes everywhere. People are running, screaming, doing everything but staying calm. TV channels are in full-blown panic mode. In Korea, a massive tower has just popped up out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Hoyoung stands there, fists clenched, eyes glued to the tower outside. The status window is still yammering about the silver goblin pill. He's hesitating but knows he's got to do something. So, he swallows the pill, thinking, well, if this kills me, at least I won't have to pay off my student loans. Suddenly, he feels a strange sensation spread through his body. His eyeballs dart around, and a status window pops up, announcing he's unlocked the Sage's status window. Fancy. It claims to provide the highest survival rate in this chaos. A blue light shines, and out of nowhere, a book materializes in his hands. He opens it, and a blinding flash surrounds him. The book merges into another status window titled Guide, announcing that the world's countdown to doomsday is officially ticking. With 15 days to go, it advises him to start some serious strength training, because apparently push-ups are the answer to the apocalypse. Fast forward to now, and our boy is staring at the status window, which reads, "The door of the end has opened," and he's suddenly in a forest. Not quite what he pictured the end of days to look like. He glances at the sword slung behind him. The status window kindly labels it Blunt Sword. Well, that's reassuring. More windows pop up, informing him that the game has officially started and the tutorial is beginning. Because nothing says welcome to the apocalypse like a tutorial level. After an aptitude test, he's assigned the class Combat Swordsman. He's shocked. Another window instructs him to open the status window for more details. It's like trying to read the terms and conditions in a video game. Overwhelming and probably filled with important stuff he should pay attention to. He checks his profile, seeing he's a level 1 combat swordsman with basic swordsmanship skills and access to the Sage's status window. His HP is full and he's got 10 MP. No points to allocate yet. He swings his sword, getting a feel for this new reality. Apparently, he has to survive in the forest for an hour or find an exit. Seems like a fair trade for a tutorial. The Sage's status window pops up, offering him a survival guide. It suggests he use all 60 minutes to hunt monsters, because apparently going for the exit is for quitters. He realizes the window knew this would happen, which is either comforting or creepy. Deciding to follow the guide, he ventures deeper into the forest. Soon enough, he spots movement. A small, one-horned raccoon. Cute, but it's still a monster. The raccoon growls and leaps at him, but Hoyoung, with his newly acquired reflexes, strikes it down. He gains some experience points, which is a nice bonus. He notes that his basic swordsmanship consumes 2 MP per use. With only 10 MP, he can swing his sword with skill 5 times before running dry. Efficient hunting is key. He slashes through more raccoons, thinking of basic swordsmanship. After the last one falls, he levels up to 2, regaining his HP and MP. He now has 2 points to spend, which is like getting a bonus stats in a game. Just when he's feeling good about himself, a new status window appears, explaining the weight of knowledge. Having the Sage's status window means he'll level up slower than others. Great. He gets an overpowered tool and they hit him with a penalty. Frustrated, he checks his status again. Everything looks the same except for one thing: he still has points. He thinks hard, realizing that if he plays this right, it's not a penalty at all. It could be a game-breaking ability in disguise. Hoyoung was in the thick of it, swinging his sword with wild determination. The raccoons stood no chance against his fierce slashes, and one by one, they fell. His eyes flickered toward the floating status windows that popped up in front of him. A rush of excitement surged through him. He'd gained experience points and leveled up to 2. But before he could even finish the thought, the windows vanished into thin air, leaving him with a furrowed brow. His stats were back to level 1 as he had expected. However, the silver lining was that his remaining points were steadily increasing. It dawned on him that the more he leveled up, the more experience points he would need for the next level. This sparked an idea. Maybe it'd be smarter to boost his stats directly instead of grinding levels the old-fashioned way. Lost in thought, he contemplated his next move. His gaze shifted over his available options: stamina, strength, agility, and sensitivity. Strength and agility seemed like the go-to choices for a combat swordsman. More power for attacks and faster reflexes to dodge blows. But our boy had a different idea. He decided to boost his sensitivity stat by 4, and a new status window popped up to confirm his progress. It's not every day you see someone beefing up sensitivity, but hey, even swordsmen need to feel things, right? With his plan in motion, Hoyoung kept on slicing through the one-horned raccoons. They were just tutorial monsters, after all, and they were practically folding under his blade with the default stats. Glancing at the status window, He noted he had a full 60-minute tutorial to slay as many of these critters as possible. The real challenge wasn't defeating them. It was finding enough of them within the time limit. Luckily, with his sensitivity cranked up to 20, spotting them became a breeze. RMC was feeling pretty good about himself, almost giddy. He thought he could sense a sort of chi, which was a fancy way of saying, "I'm awesome." But just as he was riding that high, a dark energy loomed behind him. The joy vanished as quickly as it came. A notification informed him that he'd defeated all the monsters and triggered a hidden quest. Great, because things were going way too smoothly, right? A roar ripped through the air as a giant, red aura-covered monster emerged. A level 2 one-horned raccoon alpha. Hoyoung felt a wave of dread. This was no ordinary raccoon. It was the boss. The alpha lunged at him with alarming speed, and our MC barely managed to dodge in time, heart pounding in his chest. The ground shook with the beast's landing, and Hoyoung realized he was in for a real fight. The raccoon charged again, and with a determined swing of his sword, Hoyoung managed to slice through it. Relief washed over him. This was doable. The status window confirmed his victory. The boss was down, the hidden quest was cleared, and he even earned some gold. Not bad for a day's work. Breathing heavily, he looked at the raccoon alpha's lifeless body, pride swelling as he noticed he'd hit level 7. The window informed him that he had completed the tutorial. He hadn't expected the hour to stretch so long, but it was finally over. Or was it? Suddenly, he found himself in a different place altogether, surrounded by a crowd of confused people. A voice crackled through a speaker, welcoming them and announcing their successful completion of the tutorial. The crowd hung on every word as the voice continued, explaining they were now in the lobby of the tower, specifically the C-2567 region. Hoyoung's mind raced as he counted 14 men and 11 women. Did all these folks finish the tutorial too? Behind him, someone muttered about being in another place again, while a man demanded to be sent home. The scene was utter chaos. People crying for their moms and insisting it was all a dream. It was like a bad episode of a reality show. Hoyoung understood their panic. The entire world had flipped on its head in one day. He clenched his fist, telling himself to stay calm and focus on survival. Then, a woman's voice cut through the noise, asking where they were. The answer came from a mysterious voice, explaining they were in the Tower of the End. As if this day couldn't get any weirder, she looked down to see a rabbit-like creature that identified itself as Kum, a level 55, and the lower floor manager. Apparently, the tower had its own HR department, complete with cute but deadly mascots. Disbelief spread through the crowd as someone suggested it was a kid in a rabbit suit, while another person questioned if this creature was responsible for their current predicament. Kum took all this in stride, thinking their reactions were perfectly normal. When someone asked what they were supposed to do now that the world was ending, Kum responded with a sinister chuckle, informing them that they'd all be playing a game with their lives on the line. Because, that's just what you want to hear after surviving a life-threatening tutorial. The crowd erupted into chaos, but Hoyoung, fighting to keep his composure, asked if they could return to their normal lives by reaching the tower's top. Kum, with a mischievous wink, said it didn't know. Thanks for the comforting words, Kum. Frustrated, Hoyoung pressed on, asking what the point of climbing the tower was. Turning its back, the creature cryptically stated that some things didn't need meaning and warned that only death awaited those who didn't climb. A hush fell over the crowd at that ominous declaration. Kum casually mentioned that many people had already perished in the tutorial. Shock hit Hoyoung like a ton of bricks. He hadn't considered that. It was just the tutorial, but it seemed many hadn't made it through. Faces of strangers flashed in his mind, and despair gripped him. Kum then asked if anyone was willing to kill it, promising a special reward. Our MC's mind raced. Was this a trap? Despite Kum's cute appearance, it was still level 55. He decided to play it safe and watch how this unfolded. A status window advised him to help Kum get home, leaving Hoyoung conflicted. Meanwhile, a brave, or perhaps foolish, man stepped forward, volunteering to kill Kum, claiming that if it wanted to die so badly, he'd gladly help. Our boy felt a pang of regret. He was too late to act. The man charged at the rabbit, ready to deliver a mighty blow. But with surprising agility, Kum landed a powerful punch to his face, sending him flying. And there it was, the first lesson of the day. Don't mess with the cute ones. They punch back. The crowd was stunned into silence. Kum sarcastically apologized for the accidental counterattack, and panic spread like wildfire. People screamed and ran in every direction, shouting about the man's untimely demise. Hoyoung, rooted to the spot, was consumed with fear. That could have been him. Kumkum, reverting to its original form, tried to reassure everyone, laughing off the incident as a simple mistake. Sure, like accidentally sending someone into orbit was a minor slip-up. The status window reappeared, urging Hoyoung to help the rabbit get home. Doubt gnawed at him. Was the guide trying to deceive him? This was not what he had signed up for. But then again, who could say what was real or fake in a tower with killer rabbits? Kumkum, ever the charmer, decided to keep the party going by casually asking if anyone wanted to help it clock out early. The room fell into an eerie silence, the kind that makes you wonder if you should have stayed in bed that morning. Hoyoung started to suspect that the guide had been playing tricks on him. Why would it lie? Suddenly, a new window titled Sage's Status Window appeared in front of him. Intrigued, he examined the options, Sage's Eye, which would let him see others' status windows, and Guide, to call for assistance at critical moments. Of course, the catch was that picking either would slow down his leveling compared to everyone else. Classic. Hoyoung pondered the Sage's Eye. As he glanced at Kumkum, the gears in his mind started turning. He opted for the Sage's Eye, and a grin spread across his face. It was as if a light bulb had gone off, and he finally understood the situation. Kumkum, playing the part of the innocent creature, claimed it just wanted to go home. Our boy raised his hand, volunteering to help, a surge of determination coursing through him. Maybe the guide hadn't been lying after all. Kumkum, quick to call him out, loudly announced Hoyoung's name and level. Not missing a beat, he declared that his level wasn't important when he was just trying to do a good deed. Kumkum, with a fierce look, agreed and urged him to get on with it. Just as things were heating up, a woman from earlier piped up, reminding Hoyoung of the danger they had just witnessed. A chorus of voices joined in, urging him not to do anything reckless. But with a calm resolve, he assured them he had a plan, leaving the woman speechless and the crowd uncertain. Facing Kumkum, he declared they were about to see something interesting, gripping his sword tightly. The air was thick with anticipation. Kumkum, now brimming with excitement, transformed and ready to punch. Hoyoung stood his ground, his eyes locked on the rabbit's fist as it approached with alarming speed. He remembered an earlier announcement about there being 25 people, but Kumkum had only mentioned 24. The omission of the level 55 monster had to be a psychological ploy to sow fear. As the punch drew near, the crowd collectively held its breath. In a split second, Hoyoung dodged and counterattacked. Using the Sage's Eye, he confirmed his suspicion. There were only 24 people here to begin with. A status window popped up near the body of the supposed dead man, revealing that it was merely a hologram created by Kumkum. Complimenting Hoyoung on his quick thinking, Kumkum showed its profile. Everything 0, level 55. It explained it wasn't its true form, just a hologram that vanished when damaged. The revelation left everyone stunned. With a final flourish, Kumkum disappeared, leaving behind a small blue-green ball labeled Stat.1 and a parting message for the courageous. May the odds be with them. The crowd buzzed with confusion and curiosity. A hologram? It had all been a fake? They murmured amongst themselves. A man approached Hoyoung, asking how he knew. He explained that he saw blood pass through Chai Yisol, who stood so close that she should have been drenched in it. Her eyes widened in realization as she checked herself. Hoyoung concluded it had all been a show, though he thought it best to make up an excuse. Before he could relish in his small victory, a red-haired man stepped forward, looking smug. The new guy had that "I'm the boss" vibe that nobody likes. He claimed it was a waste for Hoyoung to have the ball, insisting he just got lucky. Kim Seyoung, a level 4 player with an ego to match, asserted he would have stepped up if he'd noticed sooner. Hoyoung raised an eyebrow at the waste comment. Seyoung, with a smirk, replied that still being level 1 either made him weak or a coward who ran away. He suggested Hoyoung hand over the ball for the sake of mankind, which sounded like a great slogan for a villain in a superhero movie. Hoyoung, gripping the ball tightly, felt a surge of defiance. Breaking the ball in front of Seyoung, he declared that yielding wasn't his thing, earning himself a stat point and leaving Seyoung fuming. Seyoung accused him of greed and trying to save face, but Hoyoung, trying to keep calm, thought from experience that the wisest thing to do was to avoid people like him. Yet he wondered how long he could maintain this approach. An announcement interrupted their showdown. stating that their starting gold would be distributed. It explained that gold could be used in the shop, with additional gold based on monsters hunted during the tutorial. Kim Se-young, not missing a chance to be smug, sneered at Hoyoung, telling him to consider himself lucky. The announcement continued, revealing the highest starting gold was 7,400. Shockwaves rippled through the crowd. Se-young cursed his measly 1,300 gold, while another level 4 player, Kim Jun-song, marveled at the top player's fortune, having earned 1,500 gold. Hoyoung, holding a hefty 7,400 gold, thought back to the grueling effort it took to kill those raccoons, realizing he was the top player. But he kept that little nugget of info to himself. No need to stir the pot further. A window popped up, announcing the opening of the shop. Hoyoung weighed his options. Gold could be used to buy items, level up skills, or increase stats. He methodically spent his gold, raising his strength, stamina, and agility, bringing all his stats to 20 and leaving himself with 4,600 gold. Nearby, Se-young's shouts about the expense of leveling up skills caught his attention. With a smirk, he decided to level up basic swordsmanship for 1,500 gold and bought some new clothes to replace his tattered gym uniform. At least he could look the part while swinging his sword around. As he was admiring his new look, someone called his name. He turned to see level 3 Yisol asking for advice. This was unexpected. Why was she asking a level 1 player for tips? She smiled warmly, expressing her admiration for his bravery. He peeked at her profile, noting her stats and gold. She was a class healer with a level 1 healing hand skill. To test her honesty, he asked how much gold she had. She replied 800 without hesitation. Curious, he asked if she enjoyed exercising. She admitted she didn't mind walking, leading him to guess her stamina stat was low. He suggested she invest in it, and she agreed, thanking him sincerely. Suddenly, an announcement blared, stating the first floor mission would commence soon. It instructed them to form 3-man parties and warned that incomplete parties would be filled randomly. Panic spread through the crowd like wildfire. Hoyoung had expected group missions but was caught off guard by how soon it was happening. Kim Jun-song suggested they reveal their levels for better team formation, and the players quickly started grouping up. Yizil asked Hoyoung to join forces, and he agreed. A healer was a valuable ally after all. However, despite having a healer on his side, other players steered clear of joining his party, citing flimsy excuses. A level 1 combat swordsman wasn't exactly an attractive option. Yizil, looking concerned, asked what they should do. Hoyoung noticed the level 4 players comfortably settled in their parties and glanced at the remaining players. Just then, the announcement stated that time was up and incomplete parties would be filled randomly. With no time to spare, the mission began, and they were transported to a dense forest. Hoyoung and Yisol found themselves stuck with none other than Se-young, who cursed his rotten luck loudly. Facing Se-young's glare, Hoyoung wondered if they could find a way to work together. No matter how much they disliked each other, survival was the priority. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. They had to make it work one way or another. The status window pops up with a mission for our trio. Take out the Kobold tribe in under 12 hours. No pressure, right? From their hiding spot behind some trees, they scope out the tribe's area. Kim Se-young, ever the confident one, is ready to handle this himself and tells our boy Lee Hoyoung to stay out of the way. Like that's gonna go smoothly. Our MC tries to keep the peace, reminding him it's a team mission, but this just ticks Se-young off. He accuses Hoyoung of riding his coattails and being a backseat driver. Hoyoung sighs, thinking it's best not to argue with Mr. Hothead, and agrees to let him take the lead for now. Meanwhile, Chai Yizil is tagging along quietly, already worried about how well this so-called team will work together. She's got a point. As they start moving, Se-young is on a roll, complaining about the bugs swarming around. He's acting like it's the first time he's ever been outside. Hoyoung, on the other hand, is trying to keep his cool and thinks they need to get this mission done without causing more drama. He spots some purple fruits on the trees and starts to think. But before he can piece it together, Yizil jumps in, asking if the kobold monster must be strong. He tells her there's a chance it's stronger than a one-horned raccoon, but since they're still level 1, they should be able to handle it. Of course, a reminder to stay on guard in the Tower of the End is always good advice. Yizil nods, trying to take it all in. Then, bam! Out of nowhere, a beastly creature with massive claws, a bulky body, and legs that look like they could kick a boulder into orbit appears. Hoyoung's heart starts doing a drum solo in his chest as he takes in the sight of this level 5 kobold. This way bigger and scarier than any one-horned raccoon they've come across. The kobold lets out a growl, and they quickly hide behind the trees. Yiziel, clearly freaked out, asks what they should do, noting that this monster looks like it's been hitting the gym way more than any of them. Hoyoung agrees and suggests they scout around to see if there are more kobolds. But, of course, Kim Seong has other ideas. He steps up, all bravado, accusing them of hiding like cowards. This guy really knows how to read a room, doesn't he? Without warning, Seong leaps at the kobold, landing right on top of it and starts throwing punches, loudly proclaiming that it's just a level 5. Hoyoung and Yiziel watch in stunned silence as Seong, grinning like a maniac, goes to town on the kobold. The monster glares at Seong, taking the hits, but Seong keeps on pummeling it, taunting it like he's the main act at a circus. Hoyoung can't believe the nerve of this guy. Yiziel joins the fight, using her healing powers to support Seong, who's clearly enjoying himself. Hoyoung checks their surroundings and, feeling slightly relieved, notes that there are no other kobolds around. He watches Seong's strength at 24, while the kobold's HP slowly ticks down from 92%. Okay, credit where it's due. Seong's living up to his level. But something doesn't add up. Hoyoung wonders why the damage is so low compared to Seong's strength. There has to be another factor here. Suddenly, a status window pops up with a handy guide that says kobolds are passive monsters and won't attack unless provoked. Well, there's a plot twist for you. Seong basically just punched the quiet kid in class. But our MC decides to roll with it, figuring they need to capture a few kobolds for research anyway. He closes the status window, only to spot something surprising. Seong's still going at it, using his level 1 stone fist, shouting for the kobold to die already. But then the kobold dodges, and Seong's fist goes right into a tree, snapping it like a toothpick. The tree falls and hits another kobold. Now, this one's a level 6 and it's not looking happy. Seong, who was so confident a second ago, suddenly looks like he's bitten off more than he can chew. Both kobolds charge at him. He curses, realizing he might be in deep trouble. Looking around for Hoyoung, he finds that our MC has vanished. Classic move, right? He grumbles to himself, assuming Hoyoung ran off. Meanwhile, the kobolds are roaring, ready to pummel Seong. But just then, Yiziel steps in, attacking one of the kobolds from behind. Unfortunately, she trips over a rock and faceplants on the ground. Talk about timing. She tries to get up but finds herself staring at a kobold about to attack. Out of nowhere, a sword flies through the air, stabbing a fruit. Hoyoung, in his level 1 basic swordsmanship glory, jumps into the fray. The fruit pulp splatters on the kobold, and it freezes up, letting out a groan as it dies. A status window pops up in front of Hoyoung, showing he has eliminated the level 6 kobold. Seong, never one to miss an insult, calls him a loser, but Yiziel looks at him with relief, tears in her eyes. Hoyoung takes a moment to reflect. He'd noticed the bugs eating all the other fruits but avoiding these specific ones, and it made him curious. Thanks to the guide's info, he had summoned a poison apple from his inventory. Knowing that kobolds are weak to poison, he holds up the apple, smiling like he just found the cheat code to this level 1 mission. Seong, still struggling with the level 5 kobold, watches as Hoyoung helps Yiziel to her feet. He asks if she's okay, and she thanks him, noting how close it was with the extra kobold being drawn in by the aggro. Hoyoung admits it could have been dangerous if he had been a bit later. Chai Yiziel agrees, thanking him for his help, and he replies he's just glad she's safe. When she asks where he had been, Hoyoung starts to explain, but Seong cuts him off, accusing him of being a freeloader. This guy just doesn't quit. He goes on about how Hoyoung only jumped in at the last second to steal the kill and calls him an unethical leech. Our MC stands there, speechless, wondering what kind of logic this guy is using. Seong stomps away, muttering about how he's the bigger person because of his higher level. Hoyoung sighs, realizing that Seong's inability to understand the situation will only make things tougher. As the sun sets, they arrive at the kobold village. Kim Seong, the self-proclaimed punching champion, struggling to fight the kobolds. Meanwhile, Yiziel and Hoyoung are also fighting off kobolds using the poison fruit, though their efforts look like a sideshow compared to Seong's rampage. Watching them, Seong starts cursing inwardly, wondering how they're managing to finish off the kobolds so easily. Really, bro? Can't you see them using the poisonous fruits? Then, out of nowhere, a kobold lands a punch on him. More join in, and suddenly he's surrounded and getting the stuffing beaten out of him. In pain, he desperately wishes for someone to swoop in and save him. As if on cue, the kobolds suddenly burst apart, and there stands Hoyoung, sword in hand. He casually tells Seyoung he took over the fight for a bit and asks how the ride was. Seyoung, his eyes welling up with tears, suddenly calls him Big Brother. Both Hoyoung and Yizil stare at him, utterly shocked by this sudden change of heart. And just like that, a status window pops up, indicating they have cleared the mission. The three of them return to the lobby, an awkward silence hanging in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Kim Seyoung, looking like he just got caught in an embarrassing dream, can't shake off the memory of what he did. Imagine bowing down to Lee Hoyoung like he was some kind of noble lord, pledging allegiance, and even addressing some low-level rookie as Sir. Cringefest, right? As they each experience the sweet buzz of leveling up, Chai Yizil cheerfully congratulates Lee Hoyoung, who responds with a humble smile that almost says, "Ah, shucks, it was nothing." Meanwhile, Seyoung, holding back the urge to explode, silently swears he'll serve only his boss. He's on the edge, knowing if word of this humiliation gets out, he's done for. But hey, he's a man of his word, and there's no taking it back now. Lee Hoyoung, seeing Seyoung's face contorted in frustration, wonders if the guy's just holding in a bad case of stomach cramps. Chai Yizil, scanning the empty lobby, guesses they're the first ones back and asks if they were the quickest. Hoyoung nods, saying they got lucky by figuring out the kobold's weakness. Seyoung, putting two and two together, realizes they actually placed first. Yizil, practically bouncing with excitement, yells that it wasn't just luck, it was Hoyoung's sharp eyes. Without him spotting the opportunity to use poison, they'd still be bashing their heads against a wall. Hoyoung laughs it off, claiming her support was crucial, all while secretly thinking, "I'm a total fraud." As other parties trickle back in, Lee Hoyoung notices Kim Junsong and Seo Juno's group. They probably found the poisonous apples too, he muses, hoping the rest of the teams make it out alive. Their thoughts get interrupted by a sudden commotion as another party limps in, but only two members make it. Chai Yizil's face falls as she asks about the third person, but the answer comes through choked sobs. Just the two of them survived. The announcement blares that the first-level mission has ended for all parties, and they repeat the message like a broken record. Yizil tries to argue with the system, shouting that someone's still missing, but the mechanical voice drones on. 6 parties returned, 8 players failed. Lee Hoyoung, already expecting a grim outcome, feels his heart sink further. 8 dead, just like that. He pictures a field of skulls around him, contemplating how many more will fall before they reach the top. Then the announcement shifts gears, stating that they're calculating the mission results for the survivors. The party that completed the level first gets 1,000 gold each. Yizil and Seyoung beam at their status screens, confirming their first-place victory. Hoyoung glances at his profile, noticing his 2,000 gold for both bonuses. It's less than what he got during the tutorial, but hey, gold's like a survival insurance policy. Gotta save up. Just as he's enjoying the moment, someone shouts, demanding to know which party claimed first place. With everyone staring daggers at him, Hoyoung realizes he can't dodge this one. Before he can open his mouth, Seyoung bursts out, boasting that it was them, calling everyone else weaklings. Hoyoung side-eyes him, thinking the guy's conveniently forgotten about being pounded by those kobolds. The atmosphere is tense, but Seyoung's bravado loosens it a bit. The crowd's mood, however, sours quickly as a woman snorts that for someone who took first place, his level is a measly 2. A man chimes in, pointing out he got 2,000 gold without lifting a finger. Another voice mocks his scaredy-cat performance, and yet another asks if he doesn't feel the least bit ashamed. Hoyoung sighs internally. He thought the tension was easing up. Guess not. Yizil tries to defend him, but he gently stops her, knowing it's pointless. They're not going to listen. He'll have to prove them wrong. Suddenly, Kim Junsong's voice cuts through the chaos, urging everyone to focus on surviving instead of arguing. His profile shows up, revealing his level 8 status as an archer, one of the highest in the area. Seo Juno backs him up, reminding them they need to push forward for the sake of the fallen. His profile reveals him as a combat swordsman also at level 8. Their words seem to rally the crowd, and soon, more people are shouting encouragement, trying to pull themselves together. Then, without warning, the blue flame on the torch sputters out, replaced by an intense red blaze, which flares up throughout the area, accompanied by an ominous announcement. People panic, the color change signifying something they'd rather not know. The voice announces that the survival rate for Region C, 2567, is below average and a penalty mission is now in effect. Someone shouts, asking what the heck a penalty mission is. The voice clarifies. It's a death mission, and everyone must vote for one player to take it on. Time is set at 5 minutes, and chaos ensues. The announcement mentions that if they don't vote, they'll automatically vote for themselves. The clock starts ticking, and the grim realization sinks in they have to choose someone to die. Amid the chaos, Yiziel suggests if they all vote for themselves, no one has to do the mission. Someone agrees, but Lee Jichil points out the bitter truth. They could all end up doing it. Yiziel's argument falls flat, and the seconds keep ticking away. With over a minute left, a woman points at Hoyoung, naming him as her vote. Others join in, and soon, Hoyoung's name tag is littered with names. Hoyoung knows why. He's the weakest, after all. Society's idea of protecting the weak? Long gone. Yiziel's voice cracks as she pleads for mercy, but the crowd's too desperate to care. A man shouts back that he's got no choice. He doesn't want to die either. A woman cynically adds that Hoyoung would have died anyway, being so low level. Masks drop, true colors show. With a second to spare, even Seong tosses a vote his way, his sorry ringing hollow. The announcement declares the votes are in, and a portal for the death mission materializes. The crowd gasps, reality setting in. Yiziel's eyes well up as she calls out for Hoyoung, but Seong, now laughing, seems relieved, thinking his problem's solved if Hoyoung's out of the picture. Hoyoung watches the portal, thinking the sacrificial lamb's been chosen. As he steps towards it, leaving behind faces twisted with guilt and relief, a notification catches his eye. Participation in the death mission is recommended, high chance of success, and a juicy reward awaits. With a determined grin, he strides into the portal, ready to face whatever's on the other side. As the candidates stand around anxiously, Kim Jun-song steps up to Kim Seong and Chai Yiziel, concern etched on his face. He remarks, with a hint of sadness, that even though they didn't spend much time together, they've been each other's support, and it feels bitter to part ways like this. Seong, voice tinged with irritation, shrugs it off, saying it's not bitter at all, just karma playing out. Jun-song looks puzzled, asking what Seong means by that. Seong snaps, if you just take a look at Lee Hoyoung's level, it's obvious he was freeloading while I carried the entire group. Chai Yiziel, eyes glistening with unshed tears, fires back that Hoyoung's abilities were what got them through the ordeal. Seong, his voice rising, dismisses her words, insisting Hoyoung was merely lucky, landing finishing blows on enemies already on their last legs. Yiziel, indignant, asks if Seong has conveniently forgotten that Hoyoung saved his life when he was at death's door. Seong falls silent, anger bubbling up as he replays the scenes with Hoyoung and the kobolds. A flicker of doubt crosses his mind. Could Hoyoung have some secret skill to disguise his true level? Jun-song, sensing the tension escalating, interjects, saying he truly hopes Hoyoung is as capable as Yiziel believes because that might be his only shot at surviving. Yiziel, wiping her tears and thinking back to Hoyoung's confident vow to prove himself, steels herself and declares that she knows he'll return. Jun-song, nodding with a gentle smile, expresses his agreement, clinging to that sliver of hope. Meanwhile, in the eerie depths of the Kobold tribe's territory, Lee Hoyoung surveys the familiar creatures lurking around. The atmosphere is thick with tension, but the guide's status window fills him with confidence. He muses that he was almost ready to vote himself off the island if things got dire, but now it's clear he's in control. Recalling Kim Seong's sneering face, Hoyoung's grip on his sword tightens, ready to settle the score once and for all. Suddenly, a system notification rings out, announcing the return of the kobold's hunting party. Hoyoung's eyes narrow as he spots the enraged kobold stalking toward him, signaling the start of his death mission. Eliminate the chieftain and the frenzied hunting group. As the level 12 kobold chieftain growls menacingly, Hoyoung's pulse quickens with adrenaline. The guide's status window flashes. Like the other kobolds, the chieftain is highly susceptible to poison. Hoyoung coats his sword with poison apple pulp, knowing that a level 12 boss monster and its enraged minions would be a death sentence for anyone else. The chieftain lunges, swinging its massive spear, but Hoyoung deftly sidesteps, letting the weapon crash into the ground. Fueled by a newfound confidence, he dispatches the lesser kobolds one by one with his level 2 swordsmanship, determined to claim victory. As the last of them falls, he turns to face the chieftain, taunting it for the final battle. His first strike misses as the chieftain nimbly dodges, making Hoyoung begrudgingly respect its skill. Definitely worthy of a boss fight. But just as suddenly, the chieftain turns tail and runs, leaving Hoyoung in shock. Frustrated and refusing to let it escape, he chases after it, managing to land a few hits from behind, watching its HP drop. This feels almost too easy. Just as he's about to finish the job, his sword unexpectedly got stuck in the chieftain's hide. Glancing up, he sees a bright red full moon casting an eerie light over the scene. The chieftain's eyes glow crimson, and with a deafening roar, it slashes its spear into Hoyoung's shoulder, drawing a spray of blood. Back in the lobby, Kim Seong scoffs, saying there's no use fretting over someone who's probably dead by now. He declares that from now on, he'll take charge and carry the team to the top. Chai Yiziel, still holding on to hope, prays quietly for Hoyoung's safety. Seong sneers at her, mocking her for wasting prayers on someone who's already a goner. She snaps back, saying that even in this hellhole, a little decency wouldn't kill him. Seong rolls his eyes, insisting he hasn't said anything out of line. Just then, someone shouts, pointing toward the portal. The group turns as one, eyes widening in disbelief as Lee Hoyoung emerges. A system announcement proclaiming that the player who participated in the death mission has returned alive. Hoyoung, wearing a faint smile, confirms his triumphant return. Reflecting on the guide's warning about the chieftain's strength under the red moon, Hoyoung replays the moment when his shoulder was slashed open. With his HP dangerously low, he had leaned against a tree, desperately trying to stanch the bleeding. When the chieftain charged again, its own HP barely hanging on, Hoyoung dodged at the last moment, letting the chieftain's spear smash into the tree trunk. That's when it hit him. While a sword might struggle against a wall, a carefully driven nail could pierce right through. Pouring every ounce of his strength and the chieftain's own momentum into one decisive thrust, Hoyoung drove his blade into the chieftain's heart, delivering a fatal blow. A system message popped up, confirming that stabbing had been added to his swordsmanship skills. He had cleared the death mission. Back in the tower, Chai Yiziel races toward Hoyoung, arms outstretched, shouting that she knew he'd make it back. Just as she's about to embrace him, she's abruptly shoved aside. Dazed, she looks up to see Kim Seong gripping Hoyoung in a tight bear hug, exuberantly declaring that he knew Hoyoung would return and calling him Big Brother, like they've been best friends all along. Typical Seong, always quick to jump on the winning side. Kim Seong clings tightly to Lee Hoyoung, shouting with wild excitement, "I knew you'd make it, big bro." A measly death mission could never take down the strongest guy in the universe. His laughter echoes as he boasts about Hoyoung's invincibility. Lee Hoyoung, his patience hanging by a thread, clenches his fist, resisting the overwhelming urge to punch Seong's teeth in. Their reunion is interrupted by Lee Byongkyol, who raises an eyebrow, his tone skeptical. "Did you really clear the death mission?" He adds that he's relieved Hoyoung made it back, but if he completed the mission, he should have gained a hefty chunk of experience points. Yet Hoyoung's level is still the same. The murmurs around them grow louder as the other candidates exchange glances, noting that Hoyoung is still at level 2. Some speculate if it's like the rabbit mod, implying Hoyoung's achievement might be meaningless. Hearing their whispers, Hoyoung's chest tightens. He thinks he's grown numb to it, but the world never misses a chance to push the weak further down. A bitter memory resurfaces, his first academic assessment as a child. He remembers kids whispering behind his back, one girl marveling at how he topped the midterm, while a boy accused him of cheating, sneering at how a pathetic orphan could ace exams without private tutoring. They couldn't stand to see a worm like him rise, so they wanted to crush him back into the dirt. And here he is again, surrounded by a mob ready to tear him down. Someone suggests that maybe Hoyoung just hid somewhere during the mission, biding his time. Another agrees, saying it's plausible because, at his level, he couldn't have done much besides cower in a corner. Hoyoung's grip tightens around his sword, his knuckles turning white. He already knows people like this don't change their minds easily, but right now he needs to show them something undeniable. Before he can respond, Chai Yiziel's voice cuts through the chatter. "Enough! Why do you keep doubting him?" Her tone is firm, eyes blazing with anger. She points out that Hoyoung has already proven himself by surviving the death mission. Hoyoung turns to her, heartened by her unwavering support. Seong, never one to miss a moment, jumps in, backing Yiziel up and calling her big sis. He shouts, "You guys must be out of your minds. Instead of throwing a party to celebrate my big bro's glorious return, You're ruining the mood? Shame on you. Hoyoung glances at Seong, who's rambling on, thinking he sounds like the biggest nutjob here. But oddly enough, Hoyoung feels a small sense of reassurance. He knows if they want to survive the tower, he needs everyone on the same page. To achieve that, he must give them something to believe in. He steps forward, presenting the sword now named Indomitable Sword. Its rare rank and plus 15% attack power leave the crowd stunned. Lee Byung-yeol's eyes widen, exclaiming that such a high attack boost is practically a cheat code. A woman checks her own weapon, a dull, worn sword, and mutters that no special information appears for it. Kim Junsong, eyes sparkling, praises Hoyoung for holding onto the poison apple, calling him truly extraordinary, just as Chai Yiziel had said. Yiziel claps for him, but Hoyoung, modest as ever, insists it was just luck. Junsong, however, points out that getting a reward like this is more valuable than experience points for their survival. Hoyoung's expression hardens. Survival, huh? You mean, after you all almost sent me to my death? A heavy silence falls, everyone at a loss for words. Seo Juno steps forward, looking utterly ashamed. He admits Hoyoung is right, head bowed, tears streaming down his face. He confesses that he justified voting for Hoyoung by telling himself it was unavoidable. But deep down, he knows it was pure selfishness. He was only relieved it wasn't him facing death. Juno bows deeply, apologizing through choked sobs, saying he's truly glad Hoyoung made it back alive. Hoyoung and the others watch in silence. A woman with a carefree attitude breaks the silence. Come on, why the drama? Someone had to go, and Hoyoung came back with a rare item. It's all good, right? Seo Juno's head snaps up, glaring at her. How can you say that, Seo Eunjin? Don't you feel even a shred of guilt? Eunjin shrugs, cool as ever, and counters. Weren't you the first to vote for him? Hoyoung raises a hand, stopping Juno from responding. He explains that he didn't bring this up to blame anyone but to prevent it from happening again. He points out that they must have realized during the death mission voting, the tower is trying to tear them apart, sowing distrust and conflict. His survival proves they can defy its expectations. Kim Junsong, looking inspired, asks Hoyoung if he has a plan for what's next. Hoyoung nods. We'll find a way for the most people to survive and keep climbing the tower. Step by step, we'll reach the top and reclaim our lives. His words resonate, a spark of hope igniting in the candidates. Chai Yiziel cheers, saying they'll all have to join hands to make it happen. Hoyoung agrees, and Seo Juno, tears still glistening, smiles, thinking Hoyoung is truly a generous man, far above petty concerns like level or status. Suddenly, a booming voice interrupts their resolve. How touching. But isn't this unfortunate? It's Kum, grinning mischievously as it enters. It announces that the next mission is a survival game. People groan and protest, asking why it's back again and if they'll get stat points this time too. Hoyoung, a chill running down his spine, cautiously asks what a survival mission means. Kum chuckles, calling him sharp, and explains that the level 2 mission will be a battle royale among the 15 players here. The candidates are stunned into silence as Kum elaborates. There will be 16 players and 16 doppelgangers, 32 fighters in total. To clear the mission, they must kill the doppelgangers who have the same stats and memories as the players. The catch? There's no reward for killing a doppelganger, but taking out another player will net stat points and gold. The mission is a golden opportunity for those willing to betray. Chaos erupts as people shout accusations and fears. Kum twists its finger with a malicious grin, adding that every 30 minutes without a kill, everyone will be summoned to face a massive disaster in the lobby. As it speaks, a purple light flashes, and panic spreads. A clawed hand emerges from the lightning. Someone screams that something's coming through. Lee Hoyoung's legs lock as he stares at the giant, its level unreadable. Seo Juno shouts at him to move, but Hoyoung's mind races, thinking this is exactly what Kum wants, to pit them against a monstrosity that's way out of their league. A thunderous explosion rips through the air, sending everyone sprawling to the ground. Lee Hoyoung's gaze locks onto the towering behemoth before him, and he can't help but think, this is a disaster. A man nearby, shaking like a leaf, mutters in disbelief. Is this even real? How the hell are we supposed to fight that when we barely survived the first floor? A woman, her face ghostly pale, pleads desperately, Please, someone help us. I don't want to die here. As the chaos unfolds, Lee Hoyoung observes the sheer panic gripping everyone around him. The monster lets out an ear-splitting roar, its colossal fist swinging down toward a man frozen in terror. Without hesitating, Lee Hoyoung rushes forward, grabbing the man and yanking him out of the monster's path. The man, gasping in relief, thanks him profusely, but Hoyoung, still dazed, can't help but wonder. We haven't even started the second-floor mission yet. What is this thing doing here? Kumkum's voice drips with mock sympathy. Oh, how terrifying. It quips, feigning concern. Hoyoung recalls Kumkum's earlier warning. If no one dies every 30 minutes, they'd be summoned to face a disaster. He speculates that this might just be a spectacle, a way to scare them into taking the mission seriously. If that's the case, the monster isn't truly here to kill them, right? Kim Junsong and Kim Seong engage the beast with everything they've got, but their attacks bounce off its thick hide. Junsong, panting and frustrated, shouts, "Why isn't this working? I've shot so many arrows, and it's like they're nothing." Seong, equally exasperated, swears under his breath, his sword clanging uselessly against the creature's leg. Watching their futile struggle, Lee Hoyoung grits his teeth. No, this doesn't seem like just a scare tactic anymore. Is this thing actually trying to kill us? His thoughts are interrupted by Chai Yiziel's strained voice. While healing the injured, she cries out, "I'm out of mana. I can't keep this up." Hoyoung surveys the scene. No one's dead yet, but it's only a matter of time. He knows they're running out of options. A man shouts a warning as the monster rears back for another devastating blow. Lee Hoyoung steps forward, commanding everyone to fall back. There's no time to hesitate, he tells himself. With a determined resolve, he charges forward, his mind racing. Seo Juno yells at him to retreat, but Hoyoung's focus is unshakable. If I can't stop this thing, everyone will die. He assesses the synergy between his indomitable sword and his level 8 basic swordsmanship. It's got to work. It has to. As he prepares to strike, the monster suddenly disintegrates into the wind, vanishing without a trace. For a moment, everyone is stunned into silence, staring in disbelief. Then, cheers erupt, and they begin chanting his name. Lee Hoyoung, still gripping his sword, blinks in confusion, marveling at its power. Is it really this strong? He's never experienced anything like this before. But before he can process it further, a status window pops up, notifying him that he'll be in an exhausted state for 3 minutes due to overexertion. He collapses to the ground, groaning, "I'm doomed," as the crowd's cheers fade around him. Minutes later, Lee Hoyoung comes to, surrounded by worried faces. The status window indicates his exhaustion has lifted. He hears Chai Yiziel and Kim Junsong asking if he's okay, while Seo Juno, eyes shining with admiration, praises his humility and strength, even calling his fainting a perfect exit. Hoyoung, struggling to stand, asks, "What happened to the huge disaster?" Seo Juno begins to explain, but Kumkum interrupts, smirking. "Oh, don't worry. The monster's been sent back. It was just a little preview to get you all in the right mood." Hoyoung, still reeling, realizes it was just a test. Kumkum adds with a mischievous grin, "Not very exciting though, was it? You were all so chummy despite nearly getting crushed. Remember, a kill has to happen every 30 minutes. And I mean any kill. The ones standing next to you, they might just be the ones to stab you in the back." A cold silence settles over the crowd as the implications sink in. Kumkum, its message delivered, vanishes, leaving them in tense silence. Grinding his teeth, Lee Hoyoung wonders, is there no way out of this nightmare? The blue light flickers ominously, and Seo Juno, his voice grim, says, "If we can't identify the doppelgangers, we'll have no choice but to kill each other." Lee Jichiel, his voice urgent, demands they find a solution fast. Someone suggests marking everyone since the doppelgangers share their memories, but another questions how they'll know who's real and who's not. Lee Hoyoung steps forward, drawing everyone's attention. "I have an idea," he announces. Chai Yiziel, intrigued, asks what he has in mind. "During the mission, only I will move. The rest of you should gather at the highest point on the second floor. If anyone else makes a move, assume they're a doppelganger and deal with them accordingly." On Secheng, a towering figure at level 9 and a former Special Forces member, crosses his arms, skeptical. "And why should we follow your plan?" A woman, equally doubtful, scoffs. "You're barely level 2. Why should we trust you?" Lee Hoyoung meets their eyes with steely determination. Because Kumkum said there's no reward for killing a doppelganger, but killing another player nets you stat points and gold. The tower wants us to turn on each other, not the doppelgangers. I won't play their game. This is the best way to ensure we don't fall into their trap. Kim Junsong, after a moment's thought, nods. It makes sense. We can minimize casualties this way. He then asks, Hoyoung, do you have a way to identify the doppelgangers? Hoyoung's lips curl into a confident grin. Of course I do. The forest looms around them as the status window blinks, indicating the start of the second floor mission. They have 30 minutes to kill someone. 16 players and 16 doppelgangers. Kim Seong, grumbling about the risky plan, hides behind a tree. A voice calls out to him, and he freezes, noting that his large frame isn't exactly stealthy. But relief washes over him as he recognizes Lee Hoyoung. Big bro, I thought you were a doppelganger. With a swift, fluid motion, he slashes through Seong, splitting him in two. What just happened? Let rewind a bit. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Lee Hoyoung took it upon himself to handle all the killings. The status window flashed a grim message. The second floor mission had begun, and each player had to kill at least one person within 30 minutes. With 16 players and 16 doppelgangers, Hoyoung's focus locked onto his guide status window, which revealed a critical detail. The first player to reach a certain sensitivity level would obtain the impeccable senses skill, an ability crucial for detecting doppelgangers. Hoyoung felt a surge of both pride and anxiety, knowing that his earlier boast about distinguishing doppelgangers might come true with this skill. As he watched his stats fluctuate, uncertainty gnawed at him, wondering how many points he would need to invest. Then, abruptly, another status window appeared, congratulating him on being the first to reach a sensitivity stat of 50, awarding him the coveted skill. The impeccable senses ability heightened his perception, enabling him to gather detailed information about anyone within a specific radius. He stared at his hand, now emanating a soft blue glow, marveling at the newfound clarity with which he perceived the world. It was as if everything had gained a sharper, more vibrant hue. A faint mumbling caught his attention, his enhanced senses instantly zeroing in on the source. Recognizing the voice, Hoyoung realized it was Kim Seong, grumbling about his earlier suggestion to gather at the top of the floor without taking action, calling it reckless and lamenting the exhausting climb. Impressed by the acuity of his hearing, Hoyoung pinpointed Seong's location, 500 meters away. However, the next moment, a foul, unnatural stench assaulted his senses, revealing that the figure wasn't Seong but a doppelganger. The status window promptly confirmed the kill, updating the count to 16 players and 15 doppelgangers, the mission still demanding another kill within 30 minutes. Hoyoung felt a pang of guilt, knowing the doppelganger had perfectly mimicked Seong until its death. He hoped the others were adhering to his plan, remembering the initial agreement, bolstered by Kim Junsong's support, though real-time events remained unpredictable. Hoyoung's sense of triumph was short-lived. His heart sank as he noticed that another player had fallen, reducing the numbers to 15 players and 15 doppelgangers. Panic spurred him into action as he scanned his surroundings, his heightened senses picking up on faint sounds that led him to a gruesome scene. Go Youngwa's doppelganger, level 5, had just murdered another player. Hoyoung swiftly dispatched the doppelganger, the status window reflecting 14 players and 13 doppelgangers. Relief washed over him for stopping it before further damage could be done. But as he inspected the fallen level 4 Lee Byonkyol, confusion set in. The wound was inconsistent with Go Youngwa's weapon. It was an arrow wound. His gaze darted around, and his eyes caught sight of Kim Junsong, bow in hand, ready to attack. Instinctively, Hoyoung ducked behind a tree, realizing there might be another culprit at play. When Junsong called out, demanding to know who was there, Hoyoung noticed the arrow wound on Junsong's shoulder and considered the possibility that it had been self-inflicted by his doppelganger. Cautiously, he approached, attempting to explain the situation, but Junsong remained wary, keeping his distance. Pointing to the dead doppelganger, Hoyoung finally convinced Junsong of his identity. With a grave nod, Junsong warned him about his own doppelganger before collapsing from exhaustion, and Hoyoung rushed to his aid. After some time, Hoyoung helped Junsong to his feet, and they continued together. Overcome with guilt, Junsong apologized profusely, lamenting that if he hadn't fled, perhaps others might still be alive. The horrifying thought of a malicious doppelganger bearing his likeness and sowing chaos weighed heavily on his conscience. Hoyoung, understanding his turmoil, reassured him, insisting that none of them were to blame. They were all trapped in the tower's cruel game, and their only focus should be on surviving. Suddenly, Hoyoung's senses flared, alerting him to Chai Yiziel and Seo Juno rushing towards them, calling out his name. Yiziel, visibly relieved, expressed her concern after hearing about the recent deaths, while Juno, equally distressed, struggled to comprehend how two players could have fallen so quickly. Yiziel began to examine Junsong's injuries, offering to heal him, but Hoyoung, instinct screaming, stepped in, urging Junsong to stay back. The approaching figures were not their real comrades but doppelgangers. Junsong, still reeling from the shock, watched as Seo Juno's doppelganger launched itself at Hoyoung, ranting about an old grudge from a death mission and questioning whether Hoyoung still harbored resentment, despite his reputed kindness. Their weapons clashed with a harsh, metallic screech. Junsong, shaking off his stupor, joined the fray, pledging to take on the other doppelganger. Hoyoung, bewildered by the brazen assault of these doppelgangers, wondered why they were so bold, especially when one of them held Yiziel's memories and should have known of his strength. But there was no time to ponder. Chai Yiziel's doppelganger seized the opportunity, lunging at Hoyoung from behind. He barely evaded the strike, his body moving with the fluid precision his skill granted him. As both doppelgangers pressed their attack, he expertly maneuvered, dodging and countering each strike with calculated precision. Just as he began to gain the upper hand, an arrow whizzed past his face, narrowly missing him. His gaze snapped toward Kim Junsong, who smirked disdainfully, complaining about a missed opportunity. A few moments before the chaos unfolds, Lee Hoyoung is focused on dispatching the doppelgangers of Go Young-woo with surgical precision. Meanwhile, lurking behind a nearby tree, Kim Junsong, a 35-year-old archer who once lived as a fisherman from Wonyoung, watches with a sinister grin. He calmly nocks an arrow, indulging in his twisted pastime he calls human fishing. In his excitement, he slips into his old dialect, a reminder of how deeply he relishes these moments of cruelty. As Lee Hoyoung senses his presence, Kim taunts him, asking what feelings might be churning inside him. Betrayal, futility, or perhaps pure rage. Hoyoung, reading the madness in Junsong's eyes, concludes that this man is far more unhinged than he had initially realized. Coolly, he acknowledges that he'd been waiting for Junsong to reveal his true colors. Junsong smirks in response, acting as if Hoyoung had expected this betrayal all along. Their history flashes in Hoyoung's mind, the time when he'd helped Junsong walk and, in doing so, noticed his stats rise unnaturally. It became clear then, Junsong was a ticking time bomb, a predator hiding behind a facade. You're nothing but a murderous psychopath, Hoyoung accuses coldly. With an envious gleam in his eye, Junsong counters with intrigue. Has the tower blessed you, Hoyoung? Or are you just lucky? Hoyoung, growing tired of the small talk, points his glowing blue sword directly at him and demands to know why he's willing to kill. Is gold and stats really worth all this? Or is it something more? Unfazed, Junsong lets out a twisted laugh, explaining, in this world, killing brings rewards, not penalties. Why wouldn't I do it? He releases an arrow aimed straight for Hoyoung. Hoyoung had hoped there would be something more behind Junsong's actions. A reason, a motive, but he realizes with a grim sigh that Junsong is simply a deranged psychopath who has been waiting for this moment all along. As if on cue, the doppelgangers of Chai Yiziel and Seo Juno rush towards Hoyoung. Dodging Junsong's flurry of arrows, Hoyoung parries each attack with precision, but a few still graze his face, drawing blood. Thrown to the ground, Hoyoung grits his teeth, understanding that Junsong hasn't revealed all his tricks yet. Surveying the battlefield, he notices the formation of the doppelgangers. Behind him are Seo Juno, renowned for his unmatched close combat prowess, and Chai Yiziel, the most skilled healer in the group. Positioned before him is Kim Junsong, a deadly archer with terrifying precision. Together, they form a formidable team, a near-impenetrable net that tightens with every second. As Hoyoung regains his stance, Junsong taunts, catching a big fish takes effort. You know? He admits he thought Hoyoung would be an easy target, but now he's eager to watch him suffer. With a smirk, Junsong commands the doppelgangers to close in as he draws 3 arrows in quick succession. The arrows fly towards Hoyoung with deadly intent. Hoyoung, however, uses his sharp senses to analyze their coordinated attacks. He examines the stats of both Chai Yiziel and Seo Juno, noting their formidable capabilities. Despite their impressive teamwork, Hoyoung knows one thing. They cannot match his raw power. Engaging in a fierce battle, he strikes down the doppelgangers one after another. His blade sings as it slices through the air, deflecting arrows and dealing devastating blows. The doppelgangers falter, and soon, their bodies hit the ground. The status window flashes with an update. The number of players has dropped to 14, and the doppelgangers are now down to 11. A reminder flashes: kill at least one person within 30 minutes. Breathing heavily, Hoyoung turns his gaze toward Junsong, who now kneels, drenched in sweat and trembling. In a desperate plea, Junsong begs for his life, claiming that greed and the lust for rewards had driven him to insanity. "Give me one chance. Just one chance to make things right," he whimpers. But then, with a sudden burst of manic laughter, Junsong lunges at Hoyoung, cursing him to hell. His attack is wild and uncoordinated, driven by pure desperation. Hoyoung remains calm, easily deflecting the strike and responding with a swift, fatal blow. As Junsong crumples to the ground, his eyes widen in disbelief. His final thoughts echo the bitter realization: Hoyoung is far more than just another victim. He was a force of nature, one that Junsong had grossly underestimated. The status window flashes ominously, updating the count. 13 players left, 11 doppelgangers remaining. And with the chilling reminder, at least one more person must die in the next 30 minutes. Lee Hoyoung stands, his sword dripping with blood, trying to reconcile with the reality. He has just killed another human being. His mind races with mixed emotions. Before he can fully process the moment, another status window materializes. This time, the message is unexpected, and it sends a shiver down his spine. The player who took the role of the Star Killer has died. As the words hang in the air, a crimson aura begins to swirl around him, creeping closer. Confusion settles in, but the status window makes it clear. Hoyoung now has the opportunity to become the new Star Killer. The offer comes with temptations beyond imagination. Boosted stats, doppelganger minions, legendary equipment, and unparalleled skills, all for the price of embracing the bloodthirsty role. A peculiar woman shrouded in the same crimson energy appears before him, her presence cementing the gravity of his decision. As he watches the aura swirl around her, his thoughts turn to the earlier revelation about Kim Junsong. He had somehow controlled doppelgangers, and Hoyoung understands now that the Star Killer role is what gave him that power. He considers the staggering benefits, legendary rank items, incredible stat gains, exclusive skills. For a brief moment, the allure tugs at him. But Hoyoung knows better. This path isn't for him. Unlike Junsong, he cannot bring himself to become a remorseless killer, even if the rewards are great. The doppelgangers were one thing. He knew they weren't real humans. But more human opponents? More bloodshed just to survive? No. With a resolute shake of his head, he rejects the Star Killer's challenge. Hoyoung continues walking, soon rejoining the group. They all seem relieved, though one person stands out. Kim Seyoung, his cheerful energy a stark contrast to the dire situation. "Big brother," Seyoung calls out, his bright eyes lighting up as he waves. For a brief second, Hoyoung considers whether being more ruthless might be necessary. He compliments the group for their effort, appreciating their dedication to the plan despite the circumstances. Inside, however, a storm of frustration brews. He knows their situation has grown far more complicated than he anticipated. Just as a man, accompanied by his eerily similar doppelganger, steps forward, the tension heightens. The man looks over at Hoyoung, his voice uneasy. "What's our next move? Can you even tell the real ones from the fakes?" Hoyoung affirms he can, but before he can elaborate, a voice cuts through the air. "Thanks for sticking to the plan," it says, and Hoyoung turns to see his own doppelganger standing there. Oh no. The group collectively holds its breath. The doubt in their eyes is unmistakable. A man speaks up, his voice wavering. "How do we know who to trust now?" A woman echoes the sentiment, asking if Hoyoung had anticipated this twist. He had, at least somewhat, but Junsong's betrayal had thrown everything off. Now, with his own doppelganger in the mix, the situation has become more dangerous. Lee Jichil, visibly rattled, presses Hoyoung for answers. "You said you killed the doppelgangers. Did you?" Hoyoung knows the truth. 5 doppelgangers have already fallen by his hand. But now, revealing that could expose their identities and possibly himself as a player. Yet, before he can explain, both he and his doppelganger announce the names of the deceased at the same time. The group stands in stunned silence. The simultaneous revelation has only added to the confusion. Sensing an opportunity, the doppelganger smirks and taunts, "If you really think you can trust Hoyoung, then let me remind you that he couldn't have killed the doppelgangers you trust the most." Kim Seyoung and Chai Yizil. His words stir a whirlwind of doubt, as another man accuses Hoyoung of manipulating them. A woman agrees, noting how it's the oldest trick in the book. Chai Yizil tries to reason with them, but the seed of distrust has been planted. Then, the doppelganger delivers a critical blow, stating, "If what I say is true, then Kim Junsong was the real doppelganger, and the real Junsong has already been killed." The shockwave hits the group hard. Junsong, their leader, their strongest member, gone? It seems impossible. The doppelganger grins, accusing Hoyoung of being the fake. The tension escalates as a woman proposes attacking Hoyoung to eliminate any remaining doppelgangers, but Kim Seyoung protests, pointing out that would make him a fake too. Chai Yizil and Seo Juno urge caution, reminding everyone that acting rashly could spell disaster. But time is running out, and someone warns that the 30-minute timer is ticking down. Hoyoung, weighing his options, knows he needs to act fast. He admires the cunning of his doppelganger. It's like praising himself, but he doesn't let that stop him. Then, he steps forward and admits, "I killed Kim Junsong." His doppelganger's smirk falters for the first time. Hoyoung's voice sharpens. "But there's one thing you don't know, something even you couldn't guess. Junsong killed other players. He was a traitor." Hoyoung draws his sword. With a decisive strike, he cleaves through Junsong's doppelganger, putting an end to the twisted game once and for all. Kim Junsong's doppelganger lets out a strained, harsh cough, cutting through the tense silence. The group turns toward him, realizing the situation is spiraling out of control. Before anyone can react, Lee Hoyoung's own doppelganger explodes in fury, shouting at Hoyoung, accusing him of recklessness. "What do you think you're doing?" The doppelganger roars, his eyes burning with rage. Amidst the chaos, Seo Juno's voice rises above the rest, calm but laced with curiosity. He asks Hoyoung the question now on everyone's mind. Is Kim Junsong really a traitor? His suspicion runs deep, and he quickly tries to piece together the puzzle. If the real Hoyoung just attacked Junsong, that means the truth is far more complicated than it seems. Seo Juno's logic starts to crystallize. If the real Lee Hoyoung kills a doppelganger, their true nature is revealed. That would prove his authenticity once and for all. But now, Hoyoung is saying Kim Junsong was a traitor. What could that possibly mean? Did Junsong kill humans? Seo Juno presses. Hoyoung, his face somber and serious, nods and says, "Yes. Junsong was no hero. He was a demon wearing the mask of a good person, hiding his true nature, waiting for the right moment to strike." The revelation shakes the group. Kim Eun-jin, her eyes welling with tears, can barely contain her disbelief. Her voice cracks as she cries out, "That's impossible. He saved me from a kobold. He asked if I was all right. He was kind." The weight of the accusation overwhelms her, and before anyone can stop her, she rushes at Hoyoung, ready to attack out of pure emotion. But before she can close the distance, an arrow flies through the air, striking her with deadly precision. Eun-jin gasps, turning slowly to see Kim Junsong's doppelganger standing there, bow in hand, a wicked grin plastered on his face. A cold, detached status window appears. A player has died. Players, 12. Doppelgangers, 11. The group freezes, stunned. The timer continues ticking, and they now have even less time to kill another person. The twisted grin on Junsong's doppelganger only grows wider, a mocking laugh escaping his lips. The man is reveling in the chaos. Then, another status window flickers into view. A doppelganger has died. Players, 12. Doppelgangers, 10. The tension breaks as On Secheng steps forward, his sword still raised, breathing heavily. He's the one who dealt the killing blow. "I'm sorry I doubted you," he says, voice strained with regret, speaking directly to Lee Hoyoung. Shouts erupt from the group as people scramble to understand what just happened. Realization sets in. The doppelganger is dead, and Lee Hoyoung is vindicated. Players begin clamoring for direction, turning to Hoyoung in desperation. "What now?" they plead. Hoyoung, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu, allows himself a small smile. This wasn't his first brush with chaos, and it certainly wouldn't be his last. "We need to use all the gold we can to increase our stats," he announces with firm resolve. As the group rushes to follow his orders, they use every bit of gold they can, their stats climbing higher with each new piece. With their improved stats, they are more formidable than they've ever been before. However, the tension still lingers. The battle isn't over. Later, as they make their way back to the tower, the atmosphere is heavy with the aftermath of the mission. Lee Hoyoung, deep in thought, reflects on their narrow victory. They had barely scraped by, but the players had one critical advantage. The doppelganger's stats hadn't changed since they entered the second floor. This one oversight had tipped the balance in favor of the players, but it was still a close call. An Sechang's voice interrupts Hoyoung's thoughts. It's a shame, he says, sorrow lacing his tone, that we couldn't save everyone. Hoyoung meets his gaze, feeling the weight of the losses just as deeply. We did what we could, he replies quietly. The losses still sting, and the road ahead promises to be even more dangerous. As they continue, Hoyoung's mind drifts to other regions, wondering if others are facing similar battles without someone to guide them. His unique ability to read the guide has been their lifeline, and he knows that without it, many others may be struggling to survive. He steels his resolve, promising himself that as long as there are people who believe in him, he'll fight to save as many as he can. An Sechang approaches Hoyoung once again, this time with a look of gratitude. Thank you, he says earnestly, for leading us through this. We wouldn't have made it without you. Hoyoung humbly deflects the praise, attributing their success to the group's collective efforts. But An Sechang, still feeling the sting of his earlier doubts, bows deeply. I'm sorry for ever doubting you. One by one, others follow suit. The air is filled with apologies and relieved laughter. Kim Seong, ever the joker, breaks the tension with a hearty laugh. We really dropped the ball not recognizing Hoyoung's gigachad energy from the start. Chai Yizil, with a grin, adds, I knew it first. You all were just slow to catch on. Even Seo Juno, who had initially been wary, steps forward with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry too, he says. You've proven yourself over and over. In this moment of healing and camaraderie, An Sechang makes one final request, his voice filled with respect. Please continue to lead us. We need you. Lee Hoyoung, momentarily taken aback by the heartfelt request, pauses before allowing a warm smile to spread across his face. After a brief moment of reflection, he nods and says, I will. The status window pops up, calculating gold rewards based on individual contributions, and a wave of excitement sweeps through the group. Lee Jicheol, practically glowing with joy, can't contain his enthusiasm. We're getting gold too, he exclaims as 700G is added to his profile. A woman nearby shares his excitement, delighted with her 500G reward. Their celebrations, however, are soon overshadowed by Kim Seong, who practically explodes with glee as he announces to everyone in earshot. I just got 2000G, he beams, practically bursting with pride. Lee Hoyoung watches the scene unfold in silence, a bit speechless at Seong's outburst. He thinks to himself, well, I guess it paid off for everyone since they followed the plan. A small, satisfied smile forms on his lips as he eyes his own reward, 12,500G. The smile grows as a new status window catches his attention, stating that because he has acquired more than 10,000G, his shop rank will now increase. As the new shop window appears before him, Hoyoung quickly scans the options and realizes how the system works. If he wants access to rare and powerful items, he needs to keep raising his shop's rank. Without hesitation, he spends 5,000G to purchase a level up for his basic swordsmanship, pushing it from level 2 to level 3. Reflecting on his earlier battle with the colossal monster, he recalls how he had instinctively used a higher-level technique, even though it had drained him completely. That kind of power, for just this much gold? He thinks to himself, feeling like he stumbled upon a real bargain. As Hoyoung finishes his shopping and share 1,500G with Chai Yizil, panicked, Yizil turns to him and asks why he's giving her the gold. Hoyoung, calm as always, responds, you earned it. When we fought those kobolds and doppelgangers, things would have been much harder without your help. His words are soft, but they hit hard, and she stands a little taller, her eyes bright with new determination. With a firm nod, Yizil vows to level up her healing hand from level 1 to level 2. At the same time, Kim Seong receives his own status window, informing him that Hoyoung has also shared 200G with him. Overcome with emotion, calling him Big Bro. Stop being weird and just keep up the good work, Hoyoung says, trying to shake off the awkwardness. In truth, Hoyoung knows Seong has potential. He'll be useful if he gets stronger. and it's always better to have competent allies rather than annoyances. Sejong, however, is far from subtle. Your wish is my command from now on, big bro. Just say the word, he declares dramatically. Hoyoung, disgusted, thought to test out his newly upgraded level 3 swordsmanship on him. Suddenly, the valley-like area therein fills with new notifications as the status window announces the start of the 3rd floor mission. A siege war. It explains that this will be their first encounter with players from other regions, and their mission is to attack, bring down the castle, and occupy the altar within 24 hours. The penalty for failure remains ominously unknown. A shining purple crystal, labeled as the Return Crystal, appears in Hoyoung's hand. The status window mentions it's a time-limited item, usable only on the 3rd floor. Hoyoung examines it carefully as the others receive their own crystals. Lee Jichil, frowning in confusion, voices the question on everyone's mind. Does this mean we have to kill other people? Another player, staring at the crystal in her hand, asks, "What's this even for?" Hoyoung, eyes fixed on the status window in front of him, pieces it all together. This crystal is their failsafe, their means of survival if things go south. Turning to Kim Sejong, he reminds him of his earlier proclamation. You said you'd do anything, right? Sejong gulps nervously. This can't be good. Panting heavily as he climbs up the mountain, Sejong mutters under his breath, Hoyoung's really being too much this time. He could have just explained that I wouldn't die for real. The guide window explained that the return crystal will bring them back to the starting point upon death. Now standing before the castle gate, Sejong remembers Hoyoung's promise. 100 G if he does reconnaissance. Fired up with determination, he shouts, I'll destroy everything while I'm here. Without hesitation, Sejong charges at the gate, and the status window flickers to indicate that its durability has dropped to 81%. He keeps hitting it, knocking the percentage lower and lower, until the gate finally opens. But as soon as he steps inside, another status window flashes. The castle gate will reset in 2 seconds. Sejong, grinning like a madman, declares, no gate can withstand my power. As the gate resets, he spots 2 guards on the castle wall and notices what looks like the altar they need to occupy. His grin widens, and he prepares to charge forward, but he suddenly got hit by something. His nose starts bleeding, and he groans, confused. What the hell was that? His vision started to blur, and he saw a woman holding a gun. Lee Hoyoung's voice rings out in disbelief. A gun? Sejong, clutching his fist, yells back, yeah, a magic bullet? And it hurt like hell. Hoyoung's mind races. A gun? At this stage? That's insane. Not even on Secheng, whose class is literally soldier, has a gun. The realization hits him like a truck. The Star Killer rewards must have enabled this, and it's going to make this mission way tougher than he anticipated. But before he can say anything else, Chai Yizil steps forward confidently. Don't worry, she assures him. I've got your back. Her calm demeanor spreads through the group, and even Seo Juno and the others nod in agreement, showing their readiness for the upcoming battle. Hoyoung smiles, grateful for their support. Good. Then here's the plan. Under the eerie light of the blue moon, far from their mission, a man prostrates himself on the cold ground, tears falling from his eyes. On his back, a woman sits casually, yawning, as if the scene before her is nothing more than a dull formality. The people around her tremble in fear, caught in a nightmare they cannot escape.
To be continued. If you want to watch the next part, then like and subscribe and let me know in the comment of what recap you want to watch next.